So what happens when two people swap academia and construction for buyers advocacy?
Today, Scott and I are diving into our own personal journey from the construction site to becoming two of Brisbane's most trusted buyers agents. Alongside Barry Wilkinson from SW Brokerage, we're going to unpack the lessons, the challenges, and the turning points that shaped our journey.
Welcome to the Brisbane Property Podcast with your hosts Melinda and Scott Jennison.
For clients, which we're going to get into, but I'm really keen to jump into the market and where it is at the moment. So first and foremost, can I just get you to kind of just give me a 2-3 minute spiel about yourself, how long you've been in the market for? Mel, I'll start with yourself, if that's cool.
Yeah, of course. So Streamline Property Buyers has been Brisbane premium buyers advocacy service now for about 7 years. And I was previously working for another brand before we started our own business. Scott and I are a husband and wife team. Scott's a licensed builder. And together we've built a business that's really focused on client care and client outcomes. I think buyers advocacy as a service offering has grown so much in the last 4 or 5 years. And there's a lot of buyers agents now that treat the transaction as simply that, a deal or another number. It's absolutely not the way advocacy needs to work. And in fact, when representing a buyer, it's more about ensuring that you are protecting that buyer from risk, performing adequate due diligence, really helping them understand value in the market, and then guiding them through the process with a white glove approach, if you like, just making sure they don't make mistakes and they don't overpay unless it's a home that they absolutely love.
Can I just step back a sec? Your experience leading you into where you are now. You mentioned something, very much about customer care, and Scott, I'm going to come to yourself in a sec, mate, but if I could just take a step back, if that's cool. What got you to this point?
It's a great question. So my dad is a property investor. My parents always invested in property. So when I left home at the age of 18, Scott and I bought our first home together. So I've never rented. We knew that property was a vehicle to build wealth, and we personally have not only lived what we teach others, but we've also, built our own portfolio. So over the years, my background is in academia. So I'm actually an academic. I have a PhD. So I'm very data focused. I'm very analytical in my approach. But when we were married and started a family, I took a backward step from my academic role, and instead, Scott and I started our own construction business. So Scott's a fully licensed builder, and we ran our construction business in Brisbane, focusing predominantly on industrial and commercial properties. So we were dealing, or rather competing, with some of the most highly regarded builders across Brisbane. And we loved that. It was a great, we earned a great living from that. And we got to the point where we were able to choose what was next. And construction wasn't ever the dream job for us. And we decided when our boys we've got 3 boys as well, when they were approaching the high school years, we decided that we were going to move into something that we loved, where we could use our skill set to help others. And, we initially worked for others while we were working out what that looked like. And that's when I found the role of a buyer's agent and loved what I did when I was representing another brand. And so we decided to do it together, and cool. The rest is history.
Scott, yourself, mate, leaving the building industry to become a buyer's agent?
Probably the best thing I did. I love it.
Last day you put down the hammer, mate, and that was it?
I didn't have the hammer and nail bag on much in the later years, but as Melinda said, my background is carpentry, a builder from country New South Wales. So my path into property, I was about 15, first year apprentice with mum and dad, and they basically almost forced me, I suppose, I'll say it that way, to buy a block of land. So they were taking a cut out of my first apprentice wage back then, which was not very much. Bought a block of land. Dad and I then built a house on that property and then sold it. And that really gave me a bit of an insight into what property can do for you and can set you up. From there, I continued to buy properties from there. And obviously, as Melinda said, when we met, we then went and bought a house together. I think the building side of it, apart from the business that we ran, and it was, I did housing, I did some architectural work, then moved into the commercial industrial space. But having that experience, we could buy and then manufacture equity. So we could buy a property. The first property we bought together, we renovated it, we did it all up. And obviously I could do a lot of that myself and put those skills from that. We then sold that one and then went and bought where we live now. We've been there for 24 years, 25 years, something like that. Again, we've done renovations, etc. But then from there, we've built a portfolio. So we've gone into different asset classes, whether it's commercial, whether it's even warehouse, that side of things, industrial, and also residential and a variety, whether it's units, houses. Some we've manufactured a bit of equity in. Others we've just used our skill set from knowing property to buy the right sort of asset.
So there's a history there. It's probably what we're building towards, right? So you have the love for it. One question I will ask, Mel, you mentioned before you're very calculated, you love data, you love figures. The one question I will ask you is the why. Why did you move from a level of comfort that you had to doing what you did, given that you're very calculated? What made that decision?
Yeah, I'm not a risk taker, so it was a big decision that we made. And as I outlined before, we were in a position where we had 12 months where we could remove ourselves from income-producing activities. At the time, we had our 3 boys were in private school, so it was a big commitment. But I think when you are motivated and passionate and focused, things can happen. And it's amazing how motivating it is when you don't have a salary coming into your bank account each week and you actually have to get up and you actually have to do the work to put yourself out there. And when we first started the business, social media was quite new. We certainly weren't comfortable putting ourselves in front of a camera. We weren't running a podcast back then. We were just, mum and dad with 3 kids that used to run a construction company. So, we went through a lot of discomfort to help people understand the service that we could provide, how we could help them and how we could solve their problems. And I think that's what really enabled us to grow as a business, but also grow as a brand.
Just to talk to me about that pivotal time that you made the decision. I keep going back to this, right? Because I just want to hit more on the emotions if I can for the people that are listening, right? So it has to be a decision as to why. So Scott, like you were lumping, timber and it was dealing with, things that you didn't really find that passion. Did something happen to you both that you were like, I don't want that to happen to me whilst you were going through that buying period? Was there something that you went, hold on a second, something that's lacking in the market?
Look, I think the big change for us to get away from construction, and at that time I was doing commercial industrial. So a lot of large tilt panel warehouses was probably that was our bread and butter. That's what we used to do a lot of. At the time, and this is going back probably, 10 years or so now, maybe a bit longer, there was actually a big construction job happening at Eagle Farm Raceway. Large tilt panel fell and a couple of guys were actually killed on the job site.
That's no good.
After that...
It wasn't our job site.
It wasn't our job site either, by the way. But, it just made us really think, and the construction industry was changing a lot. There was a lot more red tape and a lot more things, hoops to jump through, and you had to, and we were a small business competing against the big guys. Just after that accident that happened, unfortunately, then voluntary manslaughter was brought in, and
industrial
manslaughter, and
as legislation,
and that really changed things. That's when Melinda said, we've got 3 boys, I'm not raising them. If something happened on one of my job sites, and it probably nothing to do with us.
When was that, mate?
Can't remember the year. It would have been 10 years ago.
Yeah, 8 to 10 years ago, around that.
And that's when the form of Streamline Property, maybe not the name, but it was like starting to gain a little bit of traction.
That's when we said, hey, let's change. Let's get out of the building industry. Melinda, then we said, let's make life easy. Let's go and work for someone. Great idea. I've never really worked for someone in my whole life. I've generally been self-employed most of the time. Melinda then went and worked for another business, which was a buyer's advocacy side of things.
How long were you there for, Mel?
I was there for 11 months.
Yeah, and I went and worked I went and worked as a senior manager for a large construction company.
Oh, wow.
And I lasted 12 months, pretty much almost to the day, and said, I can't do it. I'm unemployable. And I said, I'll go out and I'll do my own thing. And then Melinda came up with this weird idea. She said, why don't we go and be buyer's agents? Why don't we? And I must have.
Year was?
I actually said, well, it's nearly 8 years. It was on an Ekka. It was actually Ekka holiday.
August
2018.
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah. And when Melinda said it, I really honestly, I said, I'm not a buyer's agent. I'm actually a builder. And we then sat down and talked about it and said, you know what, let's give it 12 months and let's get out there and let's see what we can do and how we can do it, because we knew property and we loved it. Like we're passionate about property, have always loved property. And we knew that there was a path there that you could actually help people with. And then we thought, let's just put our skills together. And
so for Mel, someone that doesn't like risk, and probably where I'm alluding to, which we're going to get to, and why people need to trust you a little bit when they engage, is that you're not a risk taker.
That's right.
But you went into being self-employed in 2018 with three young boys in school. Scott, you'd finished your own obviously business, and then you went to project management for 12 months, and then the form of this happened. So would you call yourself a bit of a risk taker, mate?
I'm probably more risk taker, yeah.
You're more of the risk taker, and you're more calculated.
I'm the handbrake.
That's okay. You need the yin and yang, right? That's why you're so successful. So then, so 2018 happened. Then you've started Streamline Property Buyers. If you then had to look at the first 2 years, what was it like? How would you sum it up?
I'd say it was a huge struggle. Not long after we started, the Banking Royal Commission came into effect. It really impacted a lot of buyer confidence. It made it a lot harder and more difficult for people to borrow money. We were also in an environment where it's very challenging to help people understand what service we actually provided. People didn't really know the role of a buyer's agent. And so not only were we trying to find people to represent, we were also educating the broader market around what it is that we do and how we can add value during the property transaction. So then we all know in history what happened in the year 2000. COVID hit. Now, by that time we had employed 2 people to work alongside us. It was extremely stressful because if you will recall, the property market shut down. Inspections were cancelled and properties literally stopped transacting overnight. And, that was an extremely stressful time. And whilst the government provided incentives to keep people employed, we just redirected our staff to writing blogs, focusing on our website SEO. There's going to be another side. Let's actually, rather than putting them off and saying we don't have work for you anymore, we repurposed them so that by the time COVID had passed, and we were very optimistic that it was a temporary moment in time.
So you kept the staff?
We kept all of our staff on full incomes, and we repurposed their skill set. So we taught them what we needed them to do to help our business to actually come out on the other side of COVID as a stronger brand with more visibility online. We knew digital presence was extremely important in this age where people were all locked at home. And so we spent a lot of time and what little money we had at that time within the business to really build the brand, build the website presence, build the digital presence so that on the other side of COVID, we were in a position to help more people. Now, fortunately, the property market really picked up. A lot of buyers had a lot of FOMO off the back of COVID. Our inquiry levels went sky high once things opened up. And we were able to leverage the work that we'd done during the tough times to really help more people, as things became better for us.
Did you have anyone guiding you within that, COVID? You mentioned a little bit online. You mentioned the evolution of being ahead of the game, maybe where some people were. Just go back to 2018 for a sec. The reason why I probably keep bringing you back, that's cool, is actually to understand in terms of who you are to build, because I think, as we well know, it's all about the relationship. Why? What makes you uniquely different? So if you go back to 2018, we had COVID in 2020. How many people did you see between that time and the likelihood of people that you helped and age bracket? And I'll bring it back into where we are now. So 2018 to 2020, how many people did you help? And what age bracket would you have found that you would have helped within that time? Didn't give you much time on that one.
No, but I can certainly say it was a lower volume of clients. I mean, I remember in the first 6 months we serviced one client and that's a vivid memory for me because we worked really hard and we over-serviced that client and undercharged because all I was interested in was actually getting the testimonial to build the business from. We're very grateful that we've got a really great relationship with that very first client. He subsequently sold that property for a huge profit, but he put his trust in us and, we were very grateful for that because we could build our business off the back of that first testimonial. From there, it was a trickle effect. Initially, because of our background, and we are property developers as well, we did attract development clients and people that wanted to develop property. So we helped a couple of developers in the early days. Typically, they were at a slightly higher price point. So from a cash flow perspective, it did help us in the first 12 months. Then we started to trickle into the investor market. Again, because of my analytical background, I was able to establish relationships with brands that were interstate that ran podcasts. I was regularly featured on the Smart Property Investor show. We were able to leverage from the information that we shared on that platform to generate inquiry into our business and then we just converted.
So the values that you had in 2018, you'd say they were somewhat very strong within the business right now. Because of the same values,
100%.
and the rapid growth of where you are now, it's very hard to sustain that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
As a business.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, and one of our clients just completed a testimonial video for us. And one thing that I loved, it's a client that we've purchased 3 properties for because we build relationships with people. We are their partners in property. It's not just a single transaction for us. And this particular client gave us feedback that the growth that we have been able to achieve as a business and as a brand has been very sustained growth because we're very protective of the service levels and the service standards. So in that post-COVID boom, there were a lot of buyers agencies that, grew very, very quickly and they brought in a lot of people to service the inquiry. We chose not to do that. Instead, we said no to a lot of people because we knew that if we couldn't service them at the level that represented our brand, it wasn't going to work long-term for our business and our credibility. So we said no to more people than we said yes to, but as a result of that, it created strong ongoing demand for our product.
And Scott, with your background being a chippy or builder as well, you've got that eye when you see properties, right? Which is, I have to admit, there's many things I love about your brand, but I think, one of the qualities is actually for people that are first home buyers, plus also people looking at renovating, you've got that eye to know, hey, this is something that you can do. You're probably under budget. Yep. So just to really be clear here, when people are buying something, they're either going to do the kitchen or the bathroom, the deck, add a bedroom or a bathroom.
Yep.
Or remove a wall.
Or remove a wall.
Yeah, can I take that wall out?
And the unique part about using you guys is that added advantage, mate. Tell me, how many times have you called upon that as a business?
Most of the time, actually.
Every time?
Quite a lot. I think the big thing with our business, and this is something when you said earlier about the yin and the yang side of it, and it's a lot like our business. So one of the big things that makes us different from a lot of others is our qualifications. So Melinda, along with, we've got 3 in our team who are qualified property investment advisors. That's through PEPA, the Property Investment Professionals of Australia. And I'm a licensed builder. We're members of REBA. So the qualifications are really important. And I think that combination, when people look at let's say just an investor house, they know they're getting the investment advice, but they're also going to get the practical building advice. I'll look at properties, I'll look at maintenance, I'll look at preventative maintenance, I'll look at improvements, and this depends on client. Obviously, some clients don't want to do that. But then if there's a client that is interested in those types of things, I can budget for them what those sort of things will cost. And then if they are successful, or we're successful in helping them buy it, we can then organise the trades to come in and do that work for them as well.
Can you help them budget that?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah, so I can have that up front. So before they actually buy their property, they've got an idea of what the budget would be to do some things. It's amazing when some people do say to me too, by the way, if I do build this or can I change that, how much is it going to cost?
Yeah.
And everyone's very different in everyone's taste
You give the disclaimer. Or how much it's going to add to my property, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which is probably the unique part about it as well.
And I think the other thing which we're very different to others is, and I I probably overdo this a bit, maybe, I don't know, but is the after sale service. So we doing deals that's banned from, you're not allowed to use that word in our office either. Now that I've said it on your podcast, but we're not allowed. Our team's not allowed to say that word. We're helping clients and we're trying to get good outcomes for them. It's not doing a deal at all. And also, once we've purchased the property, we don't just let them go. Mm-hmm. I've gone back and helped clients that we've bought through. Just recently, a client back in 2022 purchased the property, reached out, contacted us. They had some maintenance things. I actually went out there and had a look at the property for them, gave them some advice, said, look, you could do this, change that, or get a quote for this, and just help them through the process. They're interstate. They're not even in Brisbane. But I've got the contacts and I've got that that experience and knowledge to be able to say, hey, this is a more cost-effective way to do it. You can do this. You don't have to go and do all of that. And it gives them a bit more comfort. So we're always here for our clients. And as Melinda said, a client that we've had clients purchase, I think, 4 or 5 properties with us. Some are overseas.
I have to admit, dealing with you for the last year and why I love the flow between us is that what you've just offered is because I keep going back to it. I use the word unique because buying a property knowing that it's all about an accumulation of wealth because your house that you're buying is going to be the platform for where you then propel off to doing other things to then obviously help you retire in a certain at a certain age and having enough behind you. And then Mel, with your calculated kind of mindset, making sure that, hey, you've looked at that property, you know what it's worth, you know what other properties are being sold around you, you know 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So you're not leading someone down the garden path because you haven't done your due diligence.
That's right.
And dealing with the clients that we've mutually dealt with, it's just that introductory, and I haven't had anyone speak ill at all. I really want to try and dive into stats in a second to kind of break down for people that are listening as to why a buyer's agent and the difference between a real estate agent and a buyer's agent. Okay, whether you want to go down this path. Can I just get someone to break it down for me? People that are listening, what's the difference?
Well, the big difference between a real estate sales agent and a buyer's agent is that the selling agent represents the vendor. That is the person that is selling the property. That is who they get paid by. That is who they represent, regardless of how they may communicate with you or manage you or, guide you through the process. They're getting paid by the vendor, and that is who they represent. A buyer's agent, on the other hand, is engaged exclusively to represent the buyer. So our role is to ensure that the buyer's represented in a way to de-risk the purchase, ensure that all of the due diligence is done appropriately, and also to guide on price so that they don't overpay. If they do want to pay a certain amount, we provide objective value. We don't know what an emotional value is to a person, but they're very aware of what they need to pay to secure the property, if that makes sense.
No, it does, yeah.
I'll touch, I know that I'll let Melinda have a drink, but I know I'll probably throw it back to Melinda as well. There's also buyer's agents and there's buyer's agents.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
I've got that here.
Have you? Okay, so I've jumped ahead of you there, mate.
No, far away. I love it.
It's an industry that, and you can tell we're passionate about it because it's, to me, buying property, it could make or break you. And I usually say to people, let's say the median price in Brisbane at the moment is $1 million. We've just gone over that in our last
houses.
For houses.
Crazy.
Okay, so we just tipped that on our last monthly update.
And will it stop? Sorry, Scott.
I don't think so. I don't think so. No.
The fear. Let's set the fear out there.
I don't think it'll change. I'm not the data person, okay, so I'll let Melinda throw the data at you. But if you look at on ground and what we see at the moment in the Brisbane market, there's supply and demand is way out of balance. There's not enough listings and there's way too many buyers, and that will just keep pressure on prices, let alone throw on top of that the 2032 Olympics that we all talk about and the change and how Brisbane's continuing to grow and evolve. I don't think that will change. The thing that I look at and say to people is if you're spending, say, as I said, the median price, say $1 million, that's a lot of money to spend to trust someone to help and partner with you if they're not qualified.
Do you think the lifestyle will change for people with, obviously you're just speaking about there, where I'm going with that, do you think we'll see more units as opposed to houses being built?
They can't afford
townhouses.
They just can't afford to build them. That is probably the problem. It's in it making it affordable to people to buy. So being affordable for your first home buyers in that sort of 700 price mark, builders can't build them. Developers can't actually get them out of the ground for that price at all. Construction costs have gone up too much.
So where are we going to end up? You think we'll be more houses further out, obviously, or where?
Yes,
Like where are we going to head? Where are we heading?
Yeah, because the big issue at the moment, even with the National Housing Accord, where they are, targeting, a very high number of new builds, we're so far behind target, and it's because we simply don't have land that's able to be developed to keep up with that supply. We don't have construction workers to continue to build the number of new homes that are needed. And because of the massive increase in construction costs off the back of COVID, as well as the huge increase in land cost, developers are really struggling to build high density developments that are feasible. So they're simply not able to start constructing unless they know there's a market to buy the end product, and it's costing them too much to build, and therefore there's risks that the market won't pay. That's why they're not coming. And so supply is inhibited. You're
talking about developed being obviously 3, 4, 5, 6 stories plus, right?
Correct.
So do you think that we'll start to see the big blocks being split up into 2 and having smaller size blocks in areas?
Again, even for development in that segment of the market, your splitter blocks, your 1 into 2s, your LMR or low to medium density residential zoned land here in Brisbane that can be an older home can be removed and replaced with townhouses. Feasibility for projects is simply not stacking up for developers because there's a home buyer in the market that is at the moment prepared to pay more to buy that property as a home than a developer can afford to pay for that site being a development site. So the issue is the cost to actually get into the market as well as the cost to construct. So
you're a first home buyer. Put yourself back in a first home buyer's shoes right now. What should you be looking for?
Okay, so I'll always keep it simple. You don't need all the bells and whistles.
Not okay.
A story I always talk about is, and this is obviously showing my age probably here too, by the way, when we were growing up, or even our parents, and it's just a different age bracket we're talking about and a different lifestyle as well. And I think Melinda knows where I'm going on this one. But I always talk about when we used to go to sport or whatever, we would take a thermos and we'd make a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And now they buy their, I don't know what they all buy now. You name it. Your lattes are probably boring.
I'm at netball every Saturday, mate. Trust me.
And there's their lattes and their piccolos and all those types of things. But
not playing.
We didn't do it that way. The first house we bought, like I talked about earlier, we bought, and it was a good solid house. It was nice and simple, and we put in some hard yards. Back then, and I don't think they do this too much these days, is you'd invite all your friends around, you'd put on a sausage sizzle and a few cartons of beer, and you'd make them work.
A paintbrush.
I did, mate. I did that a few years myself. But if you're a first-home buyer, look, we know interest rates are coming down. I believe they'll come down. We'll see another further % by the end of next year, right? Which improves people's borrowing power.
Yep.
What would you target?
Yeah, what would you target? So the statistic is, 37 years of age is when people tend to get their first home, right? So probably going to go into a little bit here. It's like, well, from a 37-year-old, you're going to be buying your first property. That's now the stats. Well, at 37 years of age, you've either typically got, you're single or you might be married, but you're going to have one child. And then when you bring a child into the equation, as you both know, it then reduces your borrowing capacity and also your life at the same time in terms of expenses. So by the age of 37 years of age and then maybe 45, well, you typically take out a 90% home loan on something. So on a $1 million property, you've got a $900,000 loan. Well, you're not going to shave that too much within 5 years, are you?
Not at all.
Okay, so then 40 years of age, then you've got another 25 or, say 20 years of really going hard to buy investment properties, to build that portfolio, to not being dependent on the pension when you're older.
Yep.
Okay, so you see the dilemma that we're in. So you're 37 looking. My point is this: well, where should the people from 35 to 25 be looking? Are you talking about units? Well, what price range? What would you say for a 25 to a 35-year-old listening? What should they be buying?
Maybe it's better for me to answer that because right now in Brisbane, for example, the threshold at which first home buyer incentives, cut out is $700,000. So if you're wanting to take advantage of those stamp duty concessions, etc., you'd be shopping under that $700,000 price point. Now, the median house value in Brisbane is now over $1 million. So to buy a house under $700,000, you are not going to be anywhere near the CBD. And in fact, I would argue even in areas of Greater Brisbane, you are going to be compromising on quality or size of that property in order to get into the market. The alternative, of course, is compromising on dwelling type. So instead of looking for a house, and we talked about this as a stepping stone, get into the market. Start with a unit. Median unit price right now in Brisbane has just exceeded $700,000. So that is the product that your dollar will buy if you're under that $700,000 price point. There's going to be some areas where you may have townhouse. The data segregates units and townhouses into one cohort. So whether it's a unit or a townhouse, it's captured within that median value of $700,000. I think it's also important to understand where is work, what your affordability level is, etc. Because if you can't afford to buy in the area that is going to provide the lifestyle that you want for the product that you want to live in, perhaps consider rent vesting. Perhaps you can consider getting into the market with a property, because right now with the rate of growth, and really this has been the case almost since post-COVID, we've had just in the last 5 years more than 70% price growth across Brisbane. That is huge market uplift in 5 years. So the rate of growth in property prices is occurring at a much faster rate than anyone would be able to save. So if you are saving for a deposit and yet you're sitting on the sidelines, it's actually, you're falling behind the market.
So just for people that are listening, RentVest is obviously you buying as an investment property and renting it out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if you were 25 to 35, how many people, you mentioned it just before offline, how many people did you go? Was it 18 people or 18 offers?
18 offers on
a
property, which was a unit, just under the $700,000 price point, and there were 18 offers on that particular property.
So let's look into that, right, without throwing the spotlight on you. But okay, so you're that age bracket. Let's just say 25 to 35, if not a little bit above it.
Yeah.
Average hours that you spend looking for a property, what is it, 60 to 120 hours, whatever it may be? I do have that stat, which is about online searches is about 60 to 100 hours. Your travelling's around about 15 to 30 hours, and you're looking at roughly about 8 to 12 inspections, right? Mm-hmm. The importance of having you guys in those circumstances, you're walking into an open home and you've got all these people, your instinct is just to think, oh, well,
it's too hard.
I won't get this. Let's go. Yes. You're demoralised. The energy, everything's just sapped out of you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I can give thousands of stories, but I want to hear it from you guys. Anyone that's listening out there that goes, okay, well, in that circumstances, why would a buyer's agent be good?
Have they got the kids with them as well for these inspections that are bored and screaming and want something else?
No kids, just going into the property.
I think that what we do is we save them the time, the hassle, the stress. We avoid FOMO, that fear of missing out. We keep their emotions in check. At the end of the day, buying property is an incredibly emotional experience. There's so much emotion that goes into it. We take the emotion out of it, especially if it is a home. Sellers and buyers are very emotional people. Selling agents and buyers agents are there to actually remove the emotion and negotiate more objectively. Unfortunately, in the current market, negotiation is not a strategy that often occurs when there's multiple offers on a property. But having someone by your side that understands the legislation, understands the process, that can prepare you to ensure you're finance ready, to have a professional team around you so that you can act quickly when the right property becomes available. That provides enormous value and certainty and avoids you moving on a property where there may be risks that you're not even aware of. So we're talking about the unit and townhouse market, for example. They're usually governed by body corporate schemes. A lot of buyers are still putting forward unconditional offers without even understanding what risk that imposes for them. We've literally just received some due diligence back this morning for a property that we were considering for a client, and I use were as the past tense because our due diligence exposed some significant issues within the body corporate scheme, which mean for the next 5 years or so, the sinking fund inputs are significantly higher. That becomes a cost borne by the buyer. Now, most people wouldn't know where to search, what to ask for, or where to get that information from. And working with a professional enables you to ensure no stone is left unturned. You really are making a decision knowing all of the facts about the property, and there's going to be no unpleasant surprises after you settle.
See, this is the thing, right? I don't think people, we've both been in the game for a while, people underestimate the importance of actually having that information about that property or buying the property knowing that they haven't done their due diligence or looked at the building, right?
Or even understanding what the information they're getting.
Yeah.
And this is not the first one that we've said no to. Myself being a builder, I understand what we're looking at when we're talking about construction. So I know we had another example, this was probably a month or so ago. We had a client that was really keen on a property. We did all the due diligence, got the body corporate records. There was some structural items mentioned in it. We obtained the structural engineer's report, and I went through that in detail. I understand what they're talking about when they start to talk about underpinning and all these types of things. And then I can actually say to the client, look, you could possibly up for a special levy of around about this much money. And that's just a lot of risk that people have to take on. So I think that side of it, you're avoiding mistakes as well, which is the big thing, to limit the amount of risk that we put our clients.
Can I also just add to that, sorry to interrupt, the speed of the market. Right now in Brisbane, there's a lot of properties that are being listed on a Thursday or a Friday.
And gone by Saturday.
The first opportunity to inspect is Saturday. You've got half an hour to go through that property and offers close same day. So if you're not in a position to undertake all of that due diligence instantaneously before you're inspecting, understand value before you're inspecting, you're simply going to keep missing out. And if you're talking about the unit and townhouse market, it's outperformed the housing market here in Brisbane over the last 2 years in terms of price growth. We expect it will continue to do so because of affordability.
When? How much do you think per year we'll see growth-wise on average?
So in the last 12 months alone, the unit sector's shifted 11.6% here in Brisbane. The house market is, exact figures, I think it's around 6.2. It's not coming to mind, but it's just a little more than half. So when we extrapolate that over a 2-year period, we know that units have outperformed, I think it's about 15% over 2 years versus about 7 or 8%. And I'm guessing numbers here because they're not coming to mind. But what I'm saying is that the more affordable segment of the market in Brisbane has been outperforming, will continue to outperform whilst we've got an environment where interest rates are elevated. And if we start to see those interest rates continue to come down, which is the outlook, what we're likely to see is that may re-stimulate the middle and top segments of the market in Brisbane as people have more access to funds.
Barry, I was just going to say, when you were talking about driving around and spending those hours in the car and doing 8 inspections or whatever you said.
Sometimes with the kids.
Yeah.
Sometimes with the kids. As an example, a property just last week that we actually went to, it was listed. The first open was actually on Saturday, around, I think it was 11 o'clock, something like that. Offers closed at 4 o'clock that afternoon.
8 offers.
Okay, 8 offers. Now, the thing that somebody, the average Joe Blow out looking, the first thing they would probably do is go to the open home, have a look at the property and go, oh yeah, look, we really like it. How much is it? How much? And then the dilemma of how much is it worth? The emotions kick in, all those types of things. For us, we've done all of our reporting. We've done everything behind the scenes except actually physically look at the property, so that when we've looked at the property and we do a comparative market analysis when we look at properties, so that's our independent view on where we see value, all we've done then is we've done the inspection, we can update that, and our client is informed, educated, and they've got all the information to make a big decision.
So God, there's so many questions going through my head right now. And I'm trying to, I love that advice because people will walk in, there's 18, how many? 8? Was
8
it 8?
offers?
8 offers.
Yep.
And, when clients speak to us as the finance broker, traditionally I would probably say, okay, well, you put your first offer in, and then you might get someone to give you a call back and you get a crack at it. You might have the 3. I remember those. I remember
How
giving
good
that.
would that be?
Well, I remember giving that, not advice, but I remember suggesting that to people, but it doesn't seem to be the thing anymore.
Can I just say that's property dependent, because at the same time, in parallel, we were negotiating as the only buyer on a large family home in an acreage suburb of Brisbane.
Yeah.
So, it is very dependent on the segment of the market and the product type as to what that buyer depth is like right now. And that's why it's so important to understand, what segment of the market are you buying in and how competitive is that segment of the market, because you need to be prepared to compete. And understanding the rules around multiple offer is so important, because some agents will allow you to revise your offer after submitting first time. Others, it's best and final up front. So you need to know what that
That's
looks
what
like.
people don't really understand. So it's frustrating. You hear a lot of, and I can earbash some of the agents, it doesn't bother me. You normally find that people and the communication between they just feel like they're holding something back. Whereas if I have you guys in my corner, then it feels like, hey, you're communicating, you're cutting through that red tape.
Yeah.
For a client then to look at engaging you, just to talk. What's the process there?
So people can go to our website, streamlineproperty.com.au. You can make an inquiry that will enable you to book a discovery call with a team member to understand more about the services that we provide. Importantly for us during that time, it's really understanding the problems that the buyers had in the market so far, whether they've missed out and why, and what sort of professional assistance are they looking for, because a lot of people assume that a buyer's agent is out of reach, but the reality is that we do provide various service options depending on what the buyer might be looking for, and that can start with something as simple as auction bidding, where we'll take the emotion out of that process by turning up on auction day and bidding professionally on behalf of a buyer. We can do a single property service, so someone may have found their dream home and we are engaged to do the due diligence, the pricing, the negotiation and or auction bidding on their behalf to ensure that they're not making a mistake with their purchase. And it goes right up to full service, where we'll look after the whole process for a buyer. We will search the market. We will obtain access to off-market or pre-market opportunities, so they're getting access to the entire market, and then we do all of the due diligence, pricing, negotiation as well.
So someone can just talk to you about particular properties and you can provide reports on that at a cost, of course, but you're getting it nailed straight down to go, this is where we think the property will land.
That is right, yes.
Okay, that's good to know. And I think it's really important to know that, because therefore they know from a finance sense where they're sitting, because it all comes back to having a good relationship with a good broker, which is SW Brokerage, and understanding what your cash flow is and what you can borrow first and foremost, right?
Absolutely.
Is where you need to be. Now let's look at, say, investors. Like I know you guys know this stat from me, and it really kind of gets under my skin, to be honest with you, because only 13% to between 13 and 11% of people only have investment properties in Australia.
It's a low number.
That's a low number.
It is low.
It is.
With how many people that are working here, full time, I think it might be 16 million. Not everyone's full time, of course, but then, we talk about retirement and, you're going to need, according to some stats, you'll need 690,000 with some super for a couple. That's not going to be enough in 20 years' time.
Yeah.
That's right.
So investment lending is something that, and just go back a step, it's like, well, you know what, property prices might be $1 million. I think we need to break that down to go, yes, it's $1 million, but then your average income per couple is quite high. It is actually quite high. And you'd be surprised that, I know you guys know this, but for the listeners, you would be surprised in terms of how much you can borrow.
Yeah.
And when you break it down into the cash flow and really go through it, it just becomes a number.
It does become a number. And one thing that we're really proud to be able to do for our property investor clients is to provide them with a cash flow analysis before they buy. So we will help them understand the price that it will take to buy the property. We will obtain up to 3 independent rental appraisals so that we know what income they can expect on that property. We'll also help them understand all of the holding costs. Now, these things include property management fees, rates, insurance, water, maintenance costs. These can all be factored into the software that we use to help people understand cash flow.
That's unique. That's good.
It is.
And better than that, we are also able to help our clients to understand whether there's any tax benefits associated with holding that property. So we can assess their taxable income and account for any negative gearing benefits that might be associated with the property so that they get a really good understanding of what is it going to cost me after tax to hold this property on an annual basis. And we can break that down to a weekly cash flow so that people can say that feels uncomfortable for me or that's well and truly within my affordability, because the price you pay is the cost of investing, it's the cost of getting into the market, but the cost to hold is based on someone's risk appetite, it's based on their affordability, and it's based on the lifestyle.
Plus, it's also important to remember buying an investment property is not just for 1 to 2 years. It's not like owning a car, right?
That's exactly right.
So albeit that we're going through a lot of interest rate. Yeah, that's right. We're going through interest rate reductions and we'll be there for another couple of years. And then who knows in 5 years' time when interest rates start to go up.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a good thing with the software that we use. You can actually project forward.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a 10 or a 15-year plan, you can actually project forward with the software. It also, as Melinda said, having that weekly understanding your weekly costs or your holding costs, whatever that is, people still want to live. You don't want to put everything into your investment. You still want to do family things. You still want to go on holidays. You still want to live life.
Be able to do it. I totally agree. And this is probably a common ground for us, right? It's like, well, why are people not spending? I often find in this country, jealousy is a thing that I detest in a human. Anyway, that's a different story for a different time. But I don't understand why we don't spend time to go, hey, Mel and Scott, can you tell me how to do it? We don't have that mentality here.
Yeah.
Or Barry, how do I do it? Well, let me show you, maybe just spend 1 day out of 365 on yourself.
Yeah.
Like do a detox, like a financial detox.
Yeah.
And just go, where am I? How do I need to achieve what you're talking about?
Yeah.
How many investors do you help in comparison to first-time buyers? Let's move from the first-time buyers, buying and selling again, upgraders.
So we service about 70% of our clients are property investors and the balance are owner-occupiers.
So it's very, wow. So, and if you don't mind me asking, how many inquiries do you get per year, per month, per quarter on investors? I mean, it would ebb and flow, right? But would it be...
At the moment, investor inquiry is actually quite high, and I would say we're undertaking between 7 and 10 new discovery calls per week.
Yep.
In their SMSF, or would it be in their own name, would you find?
It's variable. Every investor's a little different. A lot of buyers are looking to purchase in their own name, especially if they're first-time investors. We often find those that are building a portfolio, they might already have properties here in Queensland, and so they're considering land tax implications. They might be looking at other structures. So yes, SMSF is one of those. Some people are looking at trusts as well. So it's variable depending on the individual in terms of the entity that they'd be purchasing in. And again, a lot of people don't even understand the implications of buying in different structures, and that's something we can help them understand that. We certainly can't give advice on structure. That's the job for the accountant, but people don't know what they don't know. And so until you start a conversation with a professional that lives 100%. And breathes property and property investing, it's crazy how many people will inquire about our services and come with a budget, and they say to us during the initial discovery call, look, I've got a budget of $900,000. Which suburbs do you think would be best for me? And our response usually is that's a really difficult answer to provide, because we don't know what your goals are. We don't know whether you're targeting capital growth or yield or a balanced approach. We don't know what cash flow holding is going to be important to you. So all of these things we need to understand before we would even get down to suburb selection. And it comes down to the numbers, as we pointed out before, and we'll use that software to really draw out the numbers that are right for that individual based on their risk appetite and what they're trying to achieve. And then we can look at location, selection, and product type.
Gee, such a difference between, like, say, talking to a real estate agent as opposed to talking to you guys. I mean, this is phenomenal. And this is why probably you are who you are and why the awards that you've won, because you really, and I go right back to the start, and you mentioned before, Scotty, is about helping people. Every business I find hides behind that, 100%. It's like, I just want to help the person. It's like, well, I think when you break it down to going, I want to educate them. I want to show them what I've done. But yet people just have that. I just don't quite understand why people don't do it more from a financial sense. Between the age of 45 to 55, I often find people really need to put the foot down and give it a crack, right? So access to property that does not hit the market, right? This is probably one of the real, when I'm obviously advocate for you guys, when I'm speaking to people, this is one of the things that I hang my hat on. They see property before it comes onto the market.
100%.
How just give us an example if you could. And how often does that happen?
I'm going to pre-frame my response with the fact that not every off-market or pre-market opportunity is one worth buying, and not every off-market or pre-market opportunity is priced appropriately. So there are some buyers agents out there that will state very clearly in their marketing message that they'll buy, 80% or more off-market. That's certainly not a statistic that we would ever be proud to state. We find that a lot of off-market properties, they're opportunistic sellers. They're waiting for a price that the market might not deliver if they listed online. Or alternatively, there are some sellers that have a genuine need to sell off market or privately. They don't want others going through their home. They don't want others to know that they may be going through health issues or a divorce or something like that. So there's genuine off market sellers, and then there's opportunistic off market sellers. We will always find, for an investor, there's certainly no buying for those opportunistic sellers because they're always wanting to pay more. Absolutely, there's some home buyers that may be willing to pay more for the off-market opportunity to buy a home without competition in the event it's the perfect property, the perfect home for them. So there is a myth that exists in the market that buying off-market or pre-market results in a discount. That's certainly not the case. And in fact, we had evidence of this. We had the opportunity to purchase pre-market a townhouse just recently in the northern suburbs of Brisbane. The seller actually provided our client with the opportunity to buy at a certain price. Our client didn't want to meet them on price, and that's absolutely acceptable to us because it's not us telling the buyer what to pay. They took the property to market, and they ended up getting that price that they wanted on market. So they were willing to risk paying for the marketing cost. They ended up getting the same result as our buyer.
What would they spend on the cost?
To list a property, it's at least $5,000. It depends on the listing costs, and obviously you've got marketing expenses, etc. So, look, at the end of the day, they could have accepted our price.
So let me get this right. They had the offer.
Yep. Yes.
You got them without going to the market.
Yes.
So they spend an extra $5,000 to $8,000
to get that back.
to get the same price.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh
Correct.
God.
And look, that
ego,
happens.
mate. The ego is not your ego.
And that happens sometimes. But
Did you get the chance to ring them and go?
No. We also,
Not that you would.
we're always going to advise on where the actual value sits, but it's up to our buyer what they're prepared to pay for the exclusive right to buy off market. We generally say we're in partnership with our clients to access them to properties, whether they're on market or off market or pre-market. It doesn't matter where they are. It's about finding the right property for the client. And regardless of the method of sale, we don't have control over that. That's up to the seller and their selling agent.
Of course, yeah.
So we want to expose our clients to the best opportunity based on their brief, not just limit to those that are exclusively available off market, because they might not be the homes that match the client's needs and wants.
We've had inquiries talk to us about off markets and say that they've been promised off markets from other buyers agents, and I'm like, that's fine if that's what they promise you. Just because it's off market or on doesn't make it any better. A property if it's how the seller wants to sell it. If they want to go to market, doesn't mean that property's not better than another one that was off market.
But relationships, right? So I think people probably underestimate it. Like similar to mortgage broking, whereas you might get a client that just goes, hey, there's a cheaper rate out there, 0.15 or 0.05, and they've taken that.
Yep. And
they've bypassed our experience and as a business, and similar to yourself, to building that relationship long term. So if I was an investor or, that person that you're just mentioning just then, would you take them back on as a client?
Would I take the client on that didn't pay a higher price? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because for us, it's actually about guiding clients through the matrix. And we obviously, quite often we find the first property that we present to a client, we call it the sacrificial lamb. It's a trust building exercise. We help them understand the value. They actually have to get market validation to trust us in understanding that is the right value for the market.
Let's go back to the word matrix. I love it. I'll tell you why I love it. We could probably go down here, black hole for a while. I believe the matrix does not want you to get ahead from a banking sector. Matrix, what do you mean?
The property matrix. It's just it's a world of confusion for property buyers. They don't understand the legislation that the sales agents must work within, so they're being manipulated at times to believe that something's right when it may actually be illegal. We're seeing instances where their personal information is being misused in ways that are in breach of the Property Occupations Act. A buyer is not a skilled negotiator, whereas many selling agents are extremely skilled, and they might come across as being very helpful, but every question they ask is
a reason
And buyers usually don't understand that. And, we've seen instances where buyers have been manipulated by very clever sales agents. And I'm not suggesting that sales agents aren't doing the right thing. They are representing the vendor, and that is their job. And some of them are very, very good at manipulating a buyer to pay more. That is their job. Well, our job as buyer's agents is to not allow the buyer to be manipulated, to actually coach them through the purchase so that they understand the market and the value for the property.
So basically you're saying buying a property without a buyer's agent is like going to court without a lawyer.
You like that, yes.
It's an interesting one. And look, everyone has a choice whether to use a buyer's agent or not. There's no better expert than the family member or a friend around a barbecue. And we see that every day.
With property.
Yeah.
With property, everyone around a barbecue knows everything about property and whether to buy it or whether not to buy it and whatnot. And one of the things that probably stands out to me is auctions. Watching people, and it just kills us sometimes when we see people at auctions and the auctioneer will ask for a bid and they will give them that amount of money. And we'll just go, oh, yeah, I want 25 more. Yeah, sure, here's 25 more. We've done a lot of work, and our team, we work closely with some of the best auctioneers, and we've actually had training with auctioneers on how, he probably wouldn't want us to share this too much, but how they talk and how they train their auctioneers to talk to buyers and negotiations and things like that.
So would you say that would be one costly mistake for people?
Absolutely.
Going to agents? So would you say that would be your top number one? I mean, and probably where I'm looking at you, Scott, is that people, number two, would be looking at buying property and making mistakes, thinking that they can make the modifications to the property.
Yeah.
But they can't.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or they pull down a wall and you're like, oh, shit.
That's just cost me a lot more money now.
How often do you see that?
With our clients, not with
our clients.
No, have you seen that in the past with other people?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I've seen it in the past. And people just I keep coming back to making mistakes. I've seen some people make mistakes, and as I say, it hurts. Not even our clients. We've even seen some others advertise that we've bought this great development site, and we have a look at it straight away and go, you actually can't develop it. It's not a development. When you see those ads saying subject to council approval on realestate.com,
there's a reason.
There's a reason
for
it's
it.
subject, and it's probably not developable.
Do you know, Mel, the matrix, you've really got me here. I look at it the same way from a lending perspective because there's 65 banks out there. There's so much jargon. There's so much confusion. There's so many policies. And it's like you really need a good finance broker by your side, essentially as with a buyer's agent like yourself, to really understand that matrix because it's so confusing, right? And then people, I know that we're going to finish it up soon, but people talk about the cost. Which, you get that a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, like from a finance business, that we will find our commercial clients will pay for the fee up front for our services. They see the value. Whereas some of the other people will be like, okay, well, look, you then need to do the mistakes yourself to come back and understand. It's like your kids, right?
Yep.
People with the costs, and I know it's particularly with first home buyers, I know that a lot of the parents are paying for the cost now.
Yeah, they are.
Which is beautiful because you're getting straight to that property, cutting through all the red tape. What would you say to people out there listening to it going, oh, God, paying X amount to go and see a buyer's agent? Why would I do that?
I think the cost of mistakes can far exceed the cost for expert advice and guidance. If you're a home buyer, that's certainly the case. And if you're an investor, the cost and the opportunity cost of buying the wrong asset in the wrong location over a period of 15, 20, even 30 years can actually mean hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference. So getting expert advice up front is going to enable you potentially to avoid future costs down the track, and or make more money if it is an investment property that you've purchased. So I'm a believer in building a professional team regardless of, classic example, I have a car, take it to the mechanic to get serviced. That there's specialists that do jobs for those reasons. You have a tooth problem, you go to a dentist. You have a property acquisition problem, you go to a property buyer. And look, I'm also the president of the Real Estate Buyers Agents Association of Australia, and our organisation exists to ensure property buyers have a way of determining whether their buyer's agent is adequately licensed in all states they operate in, runs with the adequate professional indemnity insurance to ensure that as a consumer you've got legal recourse if something does go wrong, but also operates under a professional code of conduct which ensures best practice guidelines are being provided. Buyers advocacy is a new and evolving industry, and not everyone in the industry is doing it the right way, as we've pointed out previously. So it's just important that people are aligning with people that will truly look after their best interests.
So if you're looking for a buyer's agent, besides you guys, of course, but what should people do?
Yeah, head to the REBA website, which is rebaa.com.au. You can search for a buyer's agent there. All of our members meet those minimum requirements, and you can search by local government area to determine whether there's someone that is able to service you, and you'll be able to reach out and arrange a chat with anyone that's in that service area.
I could sit here probably for another hour, actually. Any other words of wisdom that you would like to give out to people that are listening?
Yeah, look, I think for property buyers that are
Besides having a good broker.
Looking for information, we have our own podcast, Brisbane Property Podcast. If you're wanting to understand what's happening in Brisbane,
great.
I definitely encourage you to tune into the podcast that we run, weekly episodes. It'll teach you everything from, how to assess properties for flood risk, what body corporate disclosure information you need to be aware of, what's happening in the market, as well as so many other topics of interest. You've been on our podcast yourself, so
yep. Thank you
Barry,
very much for having me.
That we do cover a lot of different topics. But the other thing that I would say is educate yourself. Don't assume that you know the process about buying property. And if you can't or don't want to explore using a buyer's agent, there's so many resources out there that are available to educate you. Even on our own website, we have nearly 200 blogs. So streamlineproperty.com.au/blogs, you'll be able to actually access more than 200 articles about buying in Brisbane. And there's some of those blog articles are really focused at stepping you through the process to understand what due diligence is necessary. So the information is there for people that choose not to get professional representation. You just have to find it.
Love it. Scotty?
Oh, look, if people are interested in property or want to get ahead, it's a vehicle to wealth. I think it's such a valuable thing to be able to get into. Don't try and do it in and out and make money short term. It's a long term investment. You can then borrow off that with equity, etc. Even if it's your own home, it's still an investment, and it's probably one of the biggest investments you'll make in your life. I think get the professional team around you. Don't make mistakes. That's probably the biggest thing I always keep talking about. And yeah, I think the vehicle of the wealth of property is incredible. It's so valuable.
Yep.
Don't delay it. I mean, our boys, we've brainwashed them about property, and they know what we think. And trying to get and even help your kids get into property. If you can do it, get into it while you can. I just think it's a valuable thing to do.
Yeah, there's so many options out there, and fundamentally it's about cash flow. Mel and Scott Jennison, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us on the show.
Honestly, thank you. That was great. Anyone that wants to jump on to your website, I highly encourage it because it's a very interactive website. Congratulations on all the awards too.
Thank you.
Okay.